Hello, coming to you from Stones Corner in Queensland, Australia. This is Gimme Empathy. I'm your host, Scott Mercer. On this episode, I talk to the writer and poet and performer, Kaitlyn Plyley. You may have heard her before in episode 13, and I enjoyed talking to Kaitlyn so much that when I got the opportunity to interview her again when I was down in Melbourne touring with Harley Young and the Haymakers, I caught up with her and we recorded an episode for my podcast and also an episode for her podcast, Just a Spoonful, which is about young people living with chronic illness. And I will let you know when she puts that episode up. This one was really fun. I just always like talking to Kaitlyn. She's a very intelligent, interesting, funny person. So enjoy episode 39. God, 39. Of Gimme Empathy. This is Kaitlyn Plyley. Kaitlyn, what did you have for dinner last night, just for a sound test?
What did I have for dinner? I had Greek street food.
Oh, nice. Like a wrap?
No, a deconstructed wrap, aka a salad. But it had like a chicken skewer hot off the grill on the top, which hot chicken on cold salad. Ugh, so good.
Where do you go for good Greek street food?
Well, there's a place down the road called Greek Street Food, so that's literally where I go.
That's really good. There's no misleading parts about that.
Like, no, you know what you're getting.
I saw a cafe on the way here. It was called like Dear Mr. Henry or something. And
yeah.
On the side of the building, it had like a faux Egyptian hieroglyphic, but spelling out in English, Dear Mr. Henry, and like a glyph of a pharaoh.
Yeah, that sounds pretentious enough to be about right. Also, you see, like, Dear Mr. Henry, is it a bookstore? Is it a cafe?
I don't know by the title.
You don't know.
I think it was a cafe.
Know. Could be, because it's Melbourne, could be an optometrist. You just don't know.
It could be. I want to start like a real important like service business, like a medical office or something, but call it something pretentious and hipstery.
Call it like The Great Gatsby or something. And everyone will be like, "Oh, so where's Mr. Gatsby? Is that who the doctor is here?" And you're like, "Nope, just a good book."
Just to like sigh at them and roll your eyes.
So good.
Kaitlyn, to refresh our listeners' memories, how do we know each other?
4ZZZ, I think, in general. Also, am I the first person to be back on, like, to be on twice?
Not quite. So, because
I keep trying to find ways in which I'm special on this podcast.
Because when I talked to my cousins, I recorded 2 episodes with them because they live in Perth and I only see them every 5 years, and I released them as 2 different ones. And I had Jeremy Neal on twice because the second time he interviewed me.
Oh, okay. I guess that's interesting.
But you're the first repeat guest who I've specifically come here to see you and interview you on 2 separate occasions.
Yeah. I did it. I won.
You did. You won podcasting.
Yeah, thanks for coming. This is great. And then after this, we're going to record from my podcast, which we were meant to do last time, but I had given up.
Do you mean, is this some sort of crossover episode, Kaitlyn?
Oh my God, it's a crossover episode. I just woke up 20 minutes ago. I'm giddy as hell.
That's awesome. That's perfect. Maybe I should just have a nap after this one before we do your podcast, just so I'm also...
get in my headspace, man.
Yeah. So I want to play the topic roulette game with you today.
Yes.
So you've written down 10 topics that...
oh my God, it's in an actual hat.
It's in an actual hat. I've got a hat here. It's not going to rustle very well because it's
one of those like...
It's like a Russian hat?
Yeah, there's like lumberjack flap hats or something.
Yeah. I got it in Vietnam because I was 15. I thought it looked cool.
It is cool.
I brought it down here because it's cold.
But before I saw it, when you said earlier that it was a Vietnamese Russian hat, I was very confused about what I was about to see.
Oh, yeah. It looks like a Russian hat.
It does.
The fact that it's from Vietnam is probably not even relevant. But would you like to pick the first topic you're going to talk about?
Okay. I'm not looking. I don't know why. There's no way to cheat at this. Fandom, yeah.
Fandom. Now, there's a difference between, consuming a piece of culture, even following like a TV show or a movie series or something, and being like a fan, right?
I mean, I think so, but I try not to gatekeep about that stuff.
Okay.
Like, I'm not going to be like to someone, oh, you like Brooklyn Nine-Nine? Well, have you watched all of their Paley Center panels or something like that? I'm not going to be like a jerk about it. How many of them do you follow on Twitter?
But there's like a, because I'd say like I'm a fan of things, but I don't like actively contribute. I don't go out of my way to talk to other people about it. I don't make things about that sort of thing.
I don't think it matters. I think you can fan on your own, and I think you can fan in any way you want. I do think, however, that maybe what I should have specified with this topic is standom, because there is a difference between fan and stan, and I'm a stan about pretty much just one thing. And I mean, you know where stan comes from.
I don't. What is a stan?
Well, I found this out this year, actually. So I've been hearing this phrase for a while, and I just thought that it was like the young people had come up with a word. They probably had mashed fan together with another word and come up with a portmanteau, and that was what stan was, or it's like some random Vine reference. Didn't know. Turns out it's actually extremely relevant to my life. It's from the Eminem song Stan.
Oh,
right,
that kind of fan.
Yeah, like, which I was obsessed with that song in high school, and so it felt full circle to become a stan myself, where it's like, I'm staring at their poster on the wall, going, my tears gone dry, or whatever it is. Yeah, so it's like, I mean, if people haven't heard the song Stan, it's a storytelling rap song where Eminem plays he raps from the perspective of a fictional person called Stan, who writes these letters to Slim, who is one of Eminem's other characters. So he starts every verse with "Dear Slim," and then he ends it with "Your biggest fan, this is Stan," and he ends up killing himself and his pregnant girlfriend, which is very problematic. But because Slim never wrote back, and then at the end, the twist is that you hear a verse. I think Dre does it. You hear a verse from Slim. From the character Slim, and he is writing back saying like, "Oh, I finally got all your letters. Sorry that I didn't write back sooner. But hey, you seem a bit intense. Maybe you need to relax, and take care of your girlfriend." And then he's like, I saw this guy on the news and he drove off a bridge and stuff. Oh, damn, it was you.
Eminem basically wrote his own Twilight Zone episode.
It's amazing. And he performed it. I can't remember what awards show, but he performed it. Was it with Elton John?
Yeah.
I mean, those were the heydays of Eminem. I can't remember if it was before or after 8 Mile, but probably before. I was just obsessed. And so people now say stan if it's like someone that you would become so obsessed with that you would probably die for them or right. over them. And yeah, that's where I have come to that place in my life in the past 2 or 3 years.
Kaitlyn, would you die for Taylor Swift?
I would die for Taylor Swift. I mean, for real, probably for real, probably wouldn't drive off a bridge. But
to save her?
I think, I think maybe I would. I don't know if I would even think about it. I think I would just throw my bodily in front of her because she's an important force in this world. Oh, I'm getting emotional. No, I don't know. That's hard because I have a really strong self-preservational instinct. But I think that if I saw someone trying to hurt Taylor, I would just throw myself between them.
Have you done that, if not physically, maybe online?
Yes, a lot. I mean, not in the sense of you hear about fandoms turning ugly where stans will sort of mobilize an army on Twitter and bully someone who's got a dissenting opinion. And that sucks. I don't like that because people should be able to have, first of all, critical thought is important. And that's an important part of fandom, actually. I think people misunderstand and think that if I'm a stan of Taylor Swift, I love her uncritically and I don't see any problems with her and I think she's perfect and could never make a mistake. And that's quite the opposite. It's more like she is a It's because I did English at uni. So, I mean, the way I think about it is that she's a text and I am like a critical reader. It's like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of what I studied. It's like I read Jude the Obscure, and I talk about this all the time when people don't ask me about it. But like I read Thomas Hardy's Jude the Obscure at uni, and it was this text where I was like, I need to figure this text out because there's so much about it where I'm like, what are you doing? This is terrible. But I'm also just so fascinated by it, and I can't stop thinking about it. And I'm not saying Taylor Swift is terrible, but there is stuff she's done where you're like, oh, mate, stop. But at the same time, I'm just like, this is so interesting. I just need to see what happens.
I guess everyone has a problematic fave.
All faves are problematic.
Yeah.
Some would say.
Do you think the concept of having a fave is problematic? Of the idea that we do put cultural figures on these pedestals and really do worship them?
Well, I think it's important to say I don't worship Taylor Swift because I see her as a person, and I don't think you can worship someone and still retain a sense of their humanity because you've basically turned them into a god, and I don't think she's a god.
Do you think other people think she's a god?
Yes. Yeah. I see them on Instagram and Tumblr. But they're mostly teenagers, and also I have to say that I didn't grow up with Tumblr, so they all have a way of speaking that I'm not super familiar with. So I think hyperbole is just part of it sometimes. And sometimes I've gotten like, when I've sort of, before I was more familiar with that sort of online hyperbole, way of speaking, I think that I would misunderstand people sometimes and think that they really thought something was the worst, as in they had gone and ranked everything in the world and they thought that Taylor Swift was the worst. And I was like, that's strong. And then, I mean, really, when you think about all of like the, abusers that thrive in the music industry, you're saying Taylor Swift is the worst. And I still hold that opinion. I'm like, I think that there's unfair scrutiny put on her that isn't put on, like, for example, any male artists, especially at her level. Have they arrested R. Kelly yet?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I'm not saying that like you have to be a multiple sex offender to finally, get some kind of scrutiny. But you know what I'm saying? Like, she hasn't been out there. She's actually a sexual assault survivor and has stood up for sexual assault victims. Sorry, survivors. Anyway, I'm getting on a tangent. I'm getting on my Taylor Swift soapbox. What was I actually saying? Gods. Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, you say like the people on Tumblr are largely teenagers. Do you think maybe there's an element of people maybe not looking for new gods, but looking for new parents once they reach a certain age? Like an adult to look, because a lot of teenagers rebel against their parents in small or big ways as probably
they get
rightly
older.
So.
And they want new authority figures to show them what to do in the world. Is that part of it?
Well, you know how there's that thing of calling a musician or someone you're a fan of online, you call them mom or dad. I say mom because it's like an American thing a lot. Like Jay-Z just mentioned it in a verse on Everything Is Love on he and Beyonce's album that came out like a week ago or something. And he said, because, there's been this paternity rumor, I guess, for a while around this like teenager who says that he thinks Jay-Z was his dad. And Jay-Z said like, the kid ain't mine. Then he said something, I can't remember the rap exactly, but he says like, they call me daddy online kiddingly. You're not supposed to take that shit literally. So he thinks that maybe this kid, like a couple of kids have taken it too far and they actually think Jay-Z, like the greatest rapper of all time, is their dad.
Right.
Sorry, I shouldn't say of all time. People are going to get on my back. Greatest living rapper? So I think I see these teenagers online and they're calling Taylor Swift mom. Taylor Swift is only like 10 years older than them. I get annoyed sometimes because they write a lot of stuff, but then I remember that they have like a few, it's the way they speak and it's the way all of us speak online, but there's like maybe a dozen pat, sentences or terms that you use to react to everything.
Yes.
So when they post a lot on Instagram of photos of her from like 2012, you know, and then they can knit side by side with something from like today. And then they'll say, she doesn't age. And I'm like, you know, from 22 to 27 is not actually, there's not a big difference, for especially for women. Like, I think with men, you might see it more, but like for women, our hormones have already pretty much settled. So it's like not uncommon to look very similar to how you look to it, you know, throughout your mid-20s. And they're like, she doesn't age. And that really bugs me. But then I remember that they're all like 15. And so from like 10 to 15, huge difference. 15 to 20, you look very different. And so they really adorably think that continues throughout your life, that level of change. I think that's what it is. But also I think it's just a way of saying, look at our beautiful friend that we love. She doesn't age, I guess, because like in that metric, aging is bad. So that's, I think, where my discomfort with it comes. I want them to focus on things other than just how she looks all the time. And they do. On Tumblr, I think I see a lot more critical reading. Like, it's like really like strong focus on her lyrics and her storytelling and her persona, like what she means as an artist, what she's trying to mean. There's just so much. I sometimes think these kids must be killing it in English lit. They're incredible. Also, one of them, even not just one, like a few of them, this really hardcore stans who know how to code. So like last year, before she released her album, Reputation, Taylor deleted, I think she deleted her website, taylorswift.com, and she deleted all her social media, and she just went dark, and it freaked me out. I freaked out. Everyone freaked out. People who aren't stans of Taylor, who aren't Swifties, were like, oh, what's the big deal? Like, she's probably just not going to be on social media anymore. It doesn't mean something's going to happen. And I was like, oh, something's going to happen.
They always mean something's going to happen. When people go dark on everything all at once, it means an album's about to drop.
But also, the Tumblr sphere had found people who could code had gone into the back end of the website, and they had found code in there that they decrypted old Taylor Swift lyrics that she had put in there as like crumbs for fans to follow.
Nice.
I mean, that level of interaction is just mind-blowing to me. You know, so I see more of that on Tumblr because it's like, you know, more of a writing format. And on Instagram, sometimes it's just like, you know, mom, or she doesn't age, or they all say this thing and they all go, her mind. And she'll do something and she'll like do something like put, you know, because one of her famous songs is 22, and she'll put the numbers 22 and something, and they'll go, her mind. And I'm like, you know, when I take it literally, like I do, sometimes I'll be like, really? I mean, it's not that special what she did. And then I'm like, oh no, this is just their way of saying, I really like this.
When you were a teenager, what were your biggest objects of fandom?
I was deeply into the band Muse. I was deep into that fandom. It was because we didn't really have, like, social media wasn't really a thing. I don't remember that being a big part of the fandom, but it was me and like two other girls at my high school, and we were all obsessed with Muse. And so we would go to each other's houses and we would make t-shirts, and we had a scrapbook. We would scour, like we would stay up and watch Rage to try and catch a glimpse of them. And we would, you know, cut out pictures of them from music magazines and stuff like that. And if like, when the band started getting bigger, you know, I remember the first time we heard one of their songs outside of like the music industry, and it was like on a I still remember this. It was on their music. One of their songs was played over an ad, like a promo for the Bill on ABC, and we were like, what? Because for a long time it was just like this thing that no one else knew about, that we were like telling everyone this is great, and other people were like, whatever, I'm not going to listen to this weird, you know, screamo opera rock band from Devon that you're obsessed with. You know, with the lead singer looks a bit like a a shaved bird. Um, sorry, Matt Bellamy, if you're listening to Scott's podcast, which I assume you are.
He's on next week.
Oh, man.
He'll have his rebuttal ready.
I know you're joking, and the whole time I knew you were joking, but even when you said that, I freaked out a little bit inside. I actually got to meet him once, and the rest of the band, because I was stalking them, and I don't say that lightly. I was stalking them.
So what do you mean? Were they on tour?
Yes.
Okay.
They were on tour in Australia, and somehow, this is all a bit foggy now, but somehow me and my best friend Jess, shout out to Jess, so we were like 17 or something, 18. We'd been obsessed with them for a few years. That by then, somehow we found out what flight they were coming in on, like into Perth. Perth is small enough that you can...
Oh, so it would have been the only one, like flight from London.
No, it was more impressive than that, because they were... Like Perth was their last leg on the tour. They were doing Big Day Out. So they were coming in from like Sydney or something. And we had a friend, our other Muse friend, Esther, had a contact who knew when like all the Big Day Out flights were coming in. And so we didn't know, there was like 3 flights with just Big Day Out bands on them. So not knowing like exactly which of those flights Muse was going to be on, we just went into the airport and just watched every single flight disembark. So I saw the Black Eyed Peas, saw Jet go by. I think I talked to Jet. I remember talking to Will.i.am. The Darkness, they're not really a thing anymore, but they were there. And like some other bands, like Kings of Leon, went by, and I was like, who was that other band that everyone was obsessed with? There was that guy, I can't remember what the name of the band is, but Julian Casablancas.
The Strokes.
Yeah, the Strokes. I remember watching the Strokes, and they were drunk. Well, Julian was drunk. I mean, not surprising anyone. He was super gross. Did you talk to him? I didn't want to. He was gross. But yeah, I knew he was important because there was like a cluster of girls around him. Well,
yeah. So how many other fans of these bands had figured out what you'd figured out?
Heaps. But they were all for the other bands.
Right.
And like we were the only ones with... I remember looking at everyone's backpacks at their button badges, and we were the only ones that had like Muse stuff on.
Did you have your homemade Muse shirts?
Yeah, I think so. I know that Jess probably did. Yeah, I think I did. It was another thing is that we didn't have a lot of money, so we didn't buy a lot of merch. And also they don't, back then I think it was the kind of musicians that I'm into now, like Taylor Swift, make merch for girls. But back then it was just like straight, it was all for men. Like there were no girls' cuts in the t-shirts and stuff like that. So I wasn't really like, even though Jess was fine with wearing t-shirts, like that was her style. It wasn't really mine. So yeah, we would make our own, because then you could just buy a t-shirt that flatters you, and you can, we used to bleach the Muse logo into them. Esther had a really cool one where she bleached like the Absolution album artwork, a version of it onto a t-shirt. Oh, so jealous of that t-shirt.
So what were the band like when you met them?
So nice. Like Matt Bellamy was just like this, like, this is before the whole mom or dad thing, but he was like a sweet dad, and he was wearing an Akubra that someone had given him on the East Coast, and it was too big for him. So it was kind of adorable. It was like falling over his ears. And he did look like a little shaved baby bird. And the drummer was the hot one, Dom. That was the one we were all like lusting after. And he was nice. He was real smiley. And then there was Chris. Nobody gives a shit about Chris, the bass player. No offense. It wasn't so much that he was the bass player, because he's an excellent bass player. It's just that he had like no onstage charisma, and so nobody gave a shit about him. That was like a big thing. Like when even now at like 32, if I find other Muse fans who are like also grown up, I'll just all I have to do is be like, Chris, right? And they'll be like, fuck, nobody cares about Chris. Yeah, so he just stood on the sidelines because, nobody gave a shit. And yeah, like Matt was so lovely. We showed him our scrapbook, and he signed it in the like silver pen that, because we were really cool arts kids. So we had a scrapbook that was black paper instead of white. And so he signed it in a silver pen and he took a photo with us. And this was before, I think this was actually before digital cameras were super cheap. So I think, and camera phones were just not even, they all looked like
a Game Boy camera.
Yes, I was going to say like the promos for Paranormal Activity.
Right, yeah.
Where it's all just grainy,
yeah,
shapeless silhouettes. So I have a photo with Matt Bellamy somewhere, and I look terrible in it because I was going through a real phase at the time. But I don't know where it went. So they were lovely. Will.i.am was really nice as well, I have to say. Fergie, not so much. Jet was really cool. And the Darkness acted like they were the hottest shit in the world. Nobody remembers them anymore.
That's kind of their shtick though, isn't it?
It is. Look, it is. I just wish that it could have been more sustainable for them because I believe in a thing called love is an amazing song.
They still tour occasionally.
Do they?
Yeah, they were at like Eden's Hill Hotel in Brisbane the last couple of years, I think.
Well, I think hair metal is really fun, so that would probably be really fun to see live.
My friend Kat still loves The Darkness.
I'm so glad to hear that. Honestly, it just made me a little bit sad when they fell off the radar because I thought they were fun.
So Matt Bellamy, having met him, so beyond his physical, large-headed appearance, like in terms of his personality, what kind of bird is he?
What's that New Zealand bird that's like going extinct because it's so incompetent?
The kiwi?
No, it's not the kiwi. There's this like, I can't remember what it's called. It's like called a kappa pui or something like that. And it's, I shouldn't just guess with consonant sounds, but it's this really sweet bird that, because New Zealand didn't really have like predators until like colonial times and people were bringing like cats and foxes over, this poor bird is just like, it's just like food. It's just walking, waddling food. And all these conservationists are always trying to keep it alive. I think it's called the kakapo. And I don't know, I guess I just thought of that with like, because Matt was just like so sweet, and you just want to give him a little cuddle. And I mean, you wouldn't think it when you hear his lyrics, like, because his lyrics are all about like the apocalypse and death. But yeah, he was just like this. I'm not saying he's incompetent. It's just that like I wanted to protect him.
Oh, that's really sweet, and not what I would have expected from Matt Bellamy.
I know, right? Not what you expect from a really big rock star who went on to marry Kate Hudson.
Oh, did he? Oh.
Yeah. Then they got divorced. Very sad.
Yeah.
I forgot to tell the really great part of the story, which is that I actually, as a joke, /not joke, so like I had written a postcard for Matt and the band, and I had included a lot of Muse puns on it that I thought they would find amusing.
Amusing, very good. Is that one of them?
Yeah. It's killer material. Oh. They loved it because I put my phone number on the postcard.
Damn, girl.
And I know, I had no chill. And I kind of like Jess dared me to do it at the airport. So I have Jess to thank. They rang me the next day when they were on their way to the concert. And I was also about to leave for the concert. And they were like, we just had a little chat.
Oh my God.
And naturally awesome. it wasn't like, it was mostly one-sided because I was just like screaming eternally. I had a nice chat with them while they were in their car on the way to the venue. It was so sweet. And I never changed my phone number. So, Muse, if you're out there, you still have my phone number, guys.
Oh man, I can't believe he didn't call you again after Kate Hudson fell through.
After listening to Undisclosed Desires, yeah, I would fully date that guy. That's the most romantic song I've ever heard.
They got some sexy songs.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did in the beginning. Their songs were all like, they sounded like they were all like about like abortion and like, I will pull things out of your body and like, we're all gonna die. So yeah, they weren't really like sexy in the first couple of albums.
No.
We thought they were sexy, but that's because we were 16 and didn't know anything.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. What led you to become such big Muse fans in the first place?
I mean, I was just reading Brodie Lancaster's book, No Way, Okay, Fine, last night, where I just read her chapter sort of about musical taste. I related to a lot of it. Like, she was a music fan in Bundaberg, and she had this thing of like being like, I'm going to like all the important, quote unquote, important bands, you know, anything Rolling Stone says is important, you know, and I think a lot of us go through that, and especially girls, where you're like, anything fluffy, considered fluffy and girly is not important. So, you know, things like I really loved the Backstreet Boys. I think that was one of the first bands that I like, other than like the Wiggles, that I really loved. But that wasn't okay to love. That wasn't cool. And it wasn't important because it was made for young women, really. And anyway, so Brodie is a bit younger than me. So she was talking about One Direction. But she said something that was really like solidified something for me, which was like, it's okay to just like things. Like, you don't have to, sometimes you don't have to intellectualize it. Like, and sometimes when you can't intellectualize it, that's how you know it's just something you like. And it's not something that you're forcing yourself to like because it's cool or important. And I had a lot of trouble fitting in at high school. And then Jess was definitely one of those like indie snobs. And so I think Esther was a little bit as well. And I think just because I wanted to spend more time with them, I would really try to get into their music. And Muse was just that thing where it just clicked for me. And I actually just liked it. And so we would spend hours, I mean like a day, hours just obsessing about Muse together. And it bonded us. And, you know, we weren't into sport. Our sport was trying to see who could play, you know, the piano bit from Sunburn faster on her parents' piano. And I don't know, it was almost like it was our hobby. And we were like archivists of Muse, and it was just really fun. And I feel like after I grew up, I really worried that I was never going to find that in my life again. And I had taken a couple of sleeping tablets, and then last night I was reading Brodie's book, and then I sent her this really tearful DM, which I haven't checked Twitter yet, so I hope she's not like, oh, you loser. But I sent her this really tearful DM because, you know, she was writing about something I had kind of experienced, which was like going from thinking what I like isn't good enough. I have to like things that are like, that the skinny white boys at the parties like, because that's important, and what I like as a girl is not important. And like I happened to love Muse, which impressed guys, so that was kind of a nice, but like I loved other things, but I just wouldn't talk about how much I loved John Mayer. Because even though it's so funny, Brodie mentioned John Mayer as like an example of someone that she loved in a snobby way, and I was like, oh my gosh, when I was into John Mayer, it was before he was known as like a blues musician, and it was more like when he was singing Your Body is a Wonderland, and everyone was like, ugh. And I was like, yeah. You know, and now I'm like, no, he's so gross. And I did meet him once, and yeah, he is that gross.
How did you meet John Mayer?
Stalking.
Oh, right.
The airport.
Yeah.
Yeah. That one was way more stalkery because we didn't have any insider info. We went to his concert, and me and some friends, and he happened to mention, he likes to chat between songs, and he happened to mention in one of his like little sort of almost stand-up comedy routines that he does between his songs sometimes, like he was like playing his guitar and sort of like stream of conscious talking into his stream of consciousness, speaking into his microphone, and he was like, after this I'm gonna go back to my hotel and I'm gonna sleep for 2 hours, then I'm gonna go to the airport, and then I'm gonna fly to blah blah blah. So we knew it was the international airport. We knew it was probably in like 3 hours. Yeah, we just went there and waited. First we drove to my friend Daniel's house, slept on his floor for an hour because we were tired, and then we woke ourselves up and we drove to Perth Airport, and we waited outside his tour van, and he was not happy.
What do you mean you wasn't happy?
he wasn't happy that he had to talk to fans that early in the morning, but he didn't have to be a dick about it.
How was he a dick?
Well, if you've ever watched an interview with John Mayer, you'll know what a dick he can be. He came out and he was all like, oh. And it's like, either come out or don't. You know what I mean? Like, don't come out and then be like, oh, guys. And he came out, and then like we had our album that like slips from our, like, what do you call it? Like from the inside. You know, we used to have like
the CD, the inset.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, because you couldn't signing the plastic bit wasn't anything. So we would get the inset signed, and we had pens ready for him and everything. And it was really dark, and we thought he was signing them, but when we got them back to the car and turned the light on, he had just scribbled in like circles. And so he had just, like, that's fucked up. He just defaced the album.
Like, it's the same amount of effort to not ruin this for someone.
But also, we didn't have a lot of money, but we spent it on his stuff. You know what I mean? He was only on his second album at this point. Heavier Things did not hit the airwaves as popularly as No Room for Squares. Or, sorry, Room for Squares. He did not write No Room for Squares. Yeah, and so I don't know. I think just now that I'm in it, like, we didn't hold it against him at the time because he was our god. But now that I'm in the Taylor Swift fandom, she cares so much, and she's a fan herself, so she understands. I think she really appreciates how much work people put into being a fan and how that's actually given her a career. Whereas with John Mayer, there was very much a sense of, but I'm amazing, so of course I'm going to have a great career. And that's how you see it. You see him becoming what he is now, because he's had no humility, like no humble appreciation of how lucky he's been. He's one of those. He's almost like one of those incel guys, you know, that's like, I deserved everything I ever wanted, and I didn't quite get as much of it as I thought I would. Like, it wasn't as perfect as it should have been, and I'm angry now, and therefore I don't have to give a shit about anyone because I've been wronged, and that's his real whole vibe these days. And he's still talking about Katy Perry. God, imagine being one of his exes. You would just, I had an ex-boyfriend from when I was like 20, and he, for like all of my 20s, he would text me, like, he would Facebook message me, like, we were not Facebook friends anymore, but he would message me like at least once a year, just trying to, just being like, oh, hey. And I'm like, it's so over, you know. Anyways, so just being Katy Perry and having to listen to John Mayer like years later, still be like, oh, Katy Perry, still sing about you, still feel like I'm your man. You're not her man. Go away. Stop being so creepy. Anyway, so I loved Muse openly because that was like cool, because not many people knew who they were, and they were like of a genre that was considered really like kind of masculine and cool, masculine therefore cool. And the music wasn't for women or for girls specifically, and therefore that made it really cool that we liked it. I mean, but like all of that just meant that we were open about it, but like we liked it because we liked it. We just like Muse. Because I tried to like other bands. I just don't get the Pixies or whatever they're called. Sorry. Like, it's just taste. It's not about like making a judgment call. It's just taste. And sometimes some things click for you and some things don't. And I was really afraid after I kind of grew, I don't want to say I grew out of my Muse fandom, but like, I don't know, because I never stopped liking them. I never stopped loving them. And I wasn't one of those people that once they were on the Twilight soundtrack, I was like, whoa, they've sold out. Like, I didn't care. I quite liked Twilight, to be honest, even though that is still very unpopular, a very unpopular position to hold. People are like, you have to like it ironically, or you have to not like it at all. And I'm like, no, I just like it. I know it's terrible, but I like it. You know, and I didn't mind how cheesy it was to have like Muse playing over the scene of vampires playing vampire baseball. It's just silly fun. I liked it. But I sort of grew out of like standing over them so much. And when I found Taylor's, this is what I was DMing Brody about all tearfully at like 2 a.m. this morning, is like, I never thought I would find that pure joy again in my life. And when I became a Swiftie, it was just so good. And it's such a good fandom. She's very much tried to foster a culture of like kindness, and I don't remember having that from like rock bands, old boy rock bands. I say boy, I mean they were men, but you know what I mean. Like the Strokes probably weren't fostering a fandom of kindness. I do not mean to have a go at the Strokes. I'm just saying Julian Casablancas is gross. But yeah, so it's just been a really special thing in my life, being a Swiftie.
Having moved through like these periods of fandom, do you think it is a cyclical thing? Do you think one day you will actually grow out of Taylor Swift?
Yeah. I mean, I just want to say like, it's really hard to describe with like, I didn't grow out of Muse, because I still listen to the albums that I became obsessed with, and I just love them. But it's like with Death Cab for Cutie, I was really into Death Cab for Cutie, but I'm more of an album fan. Like I love albums. Taylor Swift is an album artist, so I think that works well because each album you're getting a different Taylor Swift, and you know that's fascinating. So I never get bored, but you know, if her next album isn't to my aesthetic or just doesn't pique my interest, then I guess I probably won't be like following every step as closely, and I probably won't be. I'll probably find. I definitely am very aware that I've become a Swiftie at a time in my life where I really needed something, you know, like I really needed something to fill that hole. You know what I mean? That sounds gross, but you know, like
what point was that? What was the hole?
Well, very chronically ill, had a lot of heartbreaks, like really bad ones, and Taylor Swift was still there, you know, and her music was like the only music that I was hearing at the time. When Red came out, when I listened to All Too Well, I was like, I have never heard anyone articulate like in music. It was just like quite what I've been experiencing. And then I discovered her previous album, Speak Now, and I listened to Dear John, and I had just gone through that kind of relationship, like abusive relationship with a guy called John. And it was just like, holy shit, she's singing my life. And so it was like, you know, her music made me feel seen. And I wasn't feeling very seen at that time. And now her like latest album, Reputation, is really like more escapism. Like 1989 was when I needed optimism. And then Reputation is just pure escapism into a world of like wealth, obscene wealth, where her biggest problem is, you know, which hottie from the internet, like which hottie from Hollywood is she going to date next? I'm at a point in my life where I would really like those to be my worst problems. So, you know, I think if Red came out now, I'd be like, I don't want to listen to that much emotional drama just because I'm already living it. And I just, I don't know. So, I mean, if her next album doesn't fit where I'm at in my life, then maybe I probably won't be as into it.
So the order her albums have come out is really synced up with what you needed at the time.
And that's something I see a lot of Swifties saying. Yeah. Like the reasons that they get into Taylor Swift is because of feeling like she was where, or like at least her album was where they were at emotionally. Because of course, once an album's out, it's probably like 2 years after she was in that place herself. But, I mean, to feel like you're growing with someone is really special.
Do you want to pick another topic, Kaitlyn?
Oh, I don't want to stop talking about Taylor Swift, but yeah, okay. Here comes the hat. Okay. What does this one say? Oh, metacognition, which when I saw it on your list of topics, I thought it was about being a precog. And I got really excited.
When was the first time you saw a future crime happening, Kaitlyn?
It was when I met John Mayer. And I saw that he was a future crime waiting to happen. Shit. Oh, dear. Do I really have to answer that?
No. Are there things that you find your brain tends to think about a lot, even when you don't want to be thinking about them? It doesn't have to be like a huge emotionally complex thing. It could just be like, are there triggers that you might see, or things that you hear or smell that just make you think about something again?
Probably a lot of things. As far as what I find myself thinking about a lot, I really like, it's not unique to me, but I really like to know how things work. So I will find myself ruminating almost anxiously. It is almost like not a good thing. So I have to snap myself out of it sometimes, but I will just find myself ruminating on how, like, some small insignificant thing that I remembered randomly. I just need to know how it worked exactly. All the moving parts, I need to figure it out. And it could be like a joke from the 70s that I saw in the 90s. Just stuff like that. And or recently I became obsessed with how this is for a real reason though, but I became obsessed with how the intersection outside my house, because I live right over an intersection, of how it works. So I started looking up how intersections work.
How far did you get? Because it's what, like a 5-way intersection or something? Yeah.
There's 5 streets converging, and what really triggered it was that I saw a man die on it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like a month ago.
Wow.
A bus hit a motorcycle. It was bad. And I was at home, so I saw it happen. And it's a terrible intersection. Like, it's actually amazing more people don't die on it. And so I kind of wanted to solve that. So I guess that's not really a good example because I had a really clear motive, but I was already thinking about it for a year. I was already just like, I get really fascinated about urban design, and I just need to know how these things work. How do roads work? Stuff like that. I'll spend a lot of time thinking about how road design works.
Will you go and research that?
Yeah, absolutely.
What did you find out about roads?
Well, the thing about this kind of thing that I do is that I will become obsessed with it for a month, and then it will kind of just fall out of my head. So I can't really give you any good, like, knowledgeable answer right now.
I think I do that sometimes, but it lasts like an hour.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely.
And normally when I'm meant to be doing something else.
Yes.
Like something really important is due tomorrow, or that I have to do. But no, I just have to know about how the Roman army was organized or something.
Oh, yeah. Like if there's a deadline, all of a sudden I'm an expert on Neoplatonic philosophy.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to be writing about like something completely different. I went into a hole about Neoplatonic philosophy the other night.
What is Neoplatonic philosophy?
Oh, geez. It only holds for an hour. Well, I think it's because I think I was following a rabbit hole about Hypatia, who I find fascinating, who was, I believe she was Roman, but she was living in Egypt, and she was a mathematician and astronomer, and a philosopher and a teacher. So she was into Neoplatonic philosophy, and I just wanted to know more about what that was. So then I was just reading. And like, I have really bad chronic insomnia, and sometimes stuff like that. Like last night I was reading because I couldn't sleep. I was reading about, very specifically, Neolithic archaeology in the like southwest of England. And it just helps me. It's almost like I have to trick my brain and go, look, here's the squeak toy, and then get it to focus on that until it realizes how boring that is and goes to sleep. Not that it's boring, but it's like not something that needs to have an action attached to it, and that's good. If I read something about feminism or like what's like, you know, the Me Too movement, I get too stressed because there's things I could do about that, but there's nothing I can do about there's nothing I can do about a Roman what is it, the latest thing I was reading, Tintagel Castle. There's nothing I can do to bring King Arthur back. I don't think I would either.
Have they settled whether he was a real person?
Oh, I don't think they'll ever settle that. I wasn't reading about that so much. I was reading about, what I specifically was reading about is archaeology at Tintagel at the site, and locals being annoyed at so many tourists coming in. just really hyper local reporting about Tintagel.
Oh, right. Like there's major fines being made, but the paper's angle is just how annoying it is for like to park at the shops.
Yeah, I think so. And also like the locals being like, you know that this is like a really important site of Cornish history, and King Arthur was like probably not even here, but English Heritage is like always playing up the English Heritage is an organization. They're always playing up the King Arthur angle because that plays well with tourists.
Right.
And so that makes them money. And all the locals are like, what about the Cornish history? And I found out that Cornish is its own language. I didn't know that. So I didn't know that Cornish people are not just English people. It's like somehow a difference. Anyway, it's fascinating. So this is the kind of stuff that I'm doing instead of sleeping, is like learning all of this.
Are there any other things you do to trick your brain like that? Yeah,
I listen to really long conversation podcasts. I'm not being meta right now. I like listening to like long form. That's why I started making my podcast Just a Spoonful, because I was like, I really wish there was more long droning conversation podcasts out there for me to listen to while I'm trying to rest, that you're not going to hear any ableism and you're not going to hear sexism. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff that jolts you unpleasantly out of your really nice relaxation. But it's just two people just chatting about stuff that's not really high stakes. And that is just so soothing. So I listen to a lot of BBC nature podcasts, where some of the best ones, which I wish there were more of, is where they're on like in the field, and they'll do recordings around and they'll describe where they are. Oh my God, it's the best.
There's nothing quite like a hushed British voice describing something as you can hear the wind.
Yes, and you there's one. Sorry, you just touched your ear. Did I yell too loud?
No, the earphone just keeps falling out. Yeah.
I thought you were like, ah.
I have very narrow ear canals, Kaitlyn, and and they don't make like those headphones with the little wings on them anymore.
Don't they?
I found it very difficult to find like decently priced ones.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
I'm sorry. Your ASMR British nature programs.
I never thought of it as ASMR, but I guess that's what ASMR is. I think ASMR is different. I just don't really understand what it is, so I assume that it must be something that I haven't experienced. Yeah, there was a really good one where it was actually an older British man who was, I guess, like some kind of nature documentarian, but he was recording. These are old like 90s radio episodes that like the BBC was re-releasing as podcasts.
Oh, wow.
So good. Because they were just fully boring. You know what I mean? Like they were not trying to be entertaining. It wasn't boring, and it's very entertaining to me. But you know how it is these days. It's like, you're listening to Radio 1. And this was just like, we know our target audience is like older people who just want to have a nice little cup of tea and listen to their radio. And they have that BBC voice, which is just hilarious. Anyway, but it was this guy who had actually grown up on this canal. And he was probably like in his 50s. And he had these childhood journals. So he'd been keeping records of like his observations of the nature in this canal for decades. And it was him going through his old journals, but also describing what was around him, like from a, what's the word? I guess like, what's the word?
Like in the environment around him, in the...
Like scientific, I guess. But somewhat... This is really I'm struggling now. What's the word for like a scientist who does nature?
A naturalist?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, like that kind of thing. So, he knew all the botany. He knew how all the this is bad. I know the word, but I'm having a lot of brain fog. Ecosystems. He knew about all the ecosystems and how everything works. He knows how rivers work. So, really informed observer describing this tiny little, very specific part of the canal that he grew up on and how it had kind of rewilded since he was a kid. And it was near the city. It was very polluted. And it had actually, he'd been guiding some of the work on it for a long time, but it had actually... it was like amazing to hear him say, when I was a kid, this was really polluted and now it's better. And species have come back. And he was describing them and you could hear, because it was summer, you could hear, the insects and you could hear the wind and you could hear the babbling of the brook. And it was just like, unfortunately, it only went for like 20 minutes because it was originally for radio. Oh, I loved it. I would love to hear more content like that. I don't want people to try and sell me some kind of angle. I literally will just listen to people describe things. When you're housebound, man, like, I'm like, just sit there, just describe a river to me. Like, I miss rivers.
Are there any other things you like being described apart from nature?
No, I think it's just nature. I mean, I read a lot, so I guess that's just reading descriptions.
Have you ever listened to like an audiobook of The Lord of the Rings? Tolkien likes describing nature.
I often think that I wish I could just reread Lord of the Rings, but it was just the bits where they're walking through nature.
Yeah.
And that's the bits that everyone is always like, oh, it's so boring. And I'm like, those were the bits that made me fall in love with it. I would literally just read about the different types of grass in Middle-earth. Oh, there's a book on my wish list that I discovered exists called The Flora of Middle-earth. And I am, oh yeah, like your eyes just went like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's how I feel about it. So someone actually, I guess, like collected all the information about whatever Tolkien, like any sort of plant that Tolkien describes, and then they illustrated them. And I really want that book because I'm like, that's what made me fall in love with Lord of the Rings when I was a kid, is like reading about like the Eleanor flower that only grows in Lothlorien and that kind of thing, or like obviously the Ents, obviously Mirkwood, all this really, I just love it. And like the great thing about this book that I was reading about it is that it encourages a love of botany. So it's not like, oh, I'd rather read about fictional plants than go and learn about the real world. It's like their sort of premise of the book is that this actually encourages a love of botany, and then people will take that outside of their love of Lord of the Rings and go and learn about the world.
It's funny, those reference books that get made, they're kind of, I find them like I wouldn't be interested in a real world version of that. But like I get, those Dorling Kindersley cross-section books in at work sometimes.
I love those books.
About like spacecraft from Star Wars.
Oh.
And I just like pour over them. Like I would never be that interested about, a real airplane.
Oh, wouldn't you?
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, I'd probably want to read about the Millennium Falcon more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
But maybe it's because we fly in real airplanes, so they've banal to us.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know though. I recently went through a period where I was procrastinating a deadline, and I decided I wanted to learn everything about Amelia Earhart, which I think everyone has at one point or another gone through. Any nerd has gone through that phase. But I found out that I was watching a documentary, and I found out that she actually wasn't the best like flyer, or like the best female flyer of that time. But she was the one that got like a wealthy backer who could market her well. Like she was good. It's just that she wasn't, the fastest or the most accomplished. There was actually a few women. So there was lots of women doing this. She wasn't like the only one. And there's like lots of politics about why she was famous and they weren't. But yeah, that was fascinating. And maybe there's something about distance. Like I'm more fascinated about historical machines, like even if they're from like 50 years ago.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Than today. Although I did did just tell you that I spent a lot of time thinking about how roads currently in Melbourne work. So I don't know. There's like a magic to design. There's a magic to figuring out how things work. And I think the thing I like about it is that I know that I can never know everything, and so I'll never get bored because there's always going to be an element of unknowableness, so that I can't run out of things to know about plants. I am genuinely interested. You can probably tell I've got botany posters on my wall. I am genuinely interested, like not just in Lord of the Rings plants, but I think what I like about Lord of the Rings is that like the plants are connected to like elves and the trees talk and walk and stuff. So that's kind of exciting.
Talking about design, have you ever been the kind of person who takes things apart?
Yeah. I used to be more so when I was a kid. My dad is the kind of person who can take anything apart and put it back together and fix it. And he used to build cars and that kind of stuff. Like, so when I was a teenager, or like a young teenager, we used to go in his workshop and do woodworking and metalworking and stuff. And we would design projects and then we would build them. So I liked doing that, but it didn't make me very If I tried talking about it at school, it became very clear that I was weird. And it was like only cool to buy things. It was only cool to, or, it was cool to do metalwork if you were a guy. So being like a weird gangly girl with glasses that wants to talk about how toilets work, how, like what goes into making a toilet flush, because sorry, but that's magic.
I still don't know.
When the power goes out, they still flush. So what's the mechanism?
I understand computers better than I understand how plumbing works. It's witchcraft. I don't understand.
That's how I feel about Wi-Fi. Yeah. Like the internet's just witchcraft to me. I recently got NBN installed and they kept trying to explain, like the company kept being like, then we need to go to the node and then there's like the fibers. And I was like, it's all just witchcraft to me. Can you just make the magic work? But yeah, so I mean, like I was always interested in that kind of thing. Is that what you asked me? Sorry.
Sure.
Sure.
Kaitlyn, you've been working on your book.
Yes.
What is your book about?
It's about living with chronic illness in Australia when you're young. So like specifically the experience of being young and chronically ill.
Where are you at in the process?
I'm about halfway through a first draft, but I had a writer, like an author mentor, sort of say to me, the only way to know how to write a book is to write it. So I went into this book thinking there's a way to write a book, but actually each book is like its own personality and its own thing. So I've written 30,000 words, but I'm still researching deeply. So I thought there would be like research phase and then writing phase and then editing phase, but I'm writing and researching constantly.
What is the book you're writing? What is its bird personality?
It's very angry.
An angry bird.
It's an angry bird.
Is it one of the angry birds from the game?
No, it's not a bird. I guess if it was an angry bird, it would be an emu.
An emu.
Maybe
my sister got
cassowary.
attacked by an emu once.
Oh, emus are scary. People don't even know.
They're huge.
Is your sister okay?
Yeah, she just got pecked.
Oh, she just got pecked.
Yeah.
By one of the largest birds in the world.
Yeah. She was a kid, so it was a bit traumatic. But
yeah. Poor thing.
She was okay.
It's terrifying. I grew up in far north Queensland for half of my childhood, and when I was really little, just terrifying. Cassowaries were just around, and man, they'll mess you up. They just like their head is just a helmet, and like it's so weird that they just grow solid bone on the top of their head or whatever it is, like bone or whatever it is, and like they'll just kill you with it. But we used to hear them make this, like, I don't know how to describe it. like that noise they make in their throats. I don't know how they do it, but it sounds like wood hitting wood.
Oh, wow.
And you would hear that in the rainforest, and it was just chilling.
Well, Kaitlyn, would you like to read something from your emu?
My emu. I'm going to say it's a cassowary.
A cassowary, okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to hang on. Is it all right if I...
Oh, yeah, we
All right, we'll edit this.
So do you know at what point in the book this passage is going to be in?
No idea. It's still very much an ever-evolving mess. Yeah, this was just something that was on my mind earlier in the year. And yeah, this is an excerpt. So I have a Patreon. Just doing a plug, patreon.com/Kay Plyley. I have these amazing patrons who have about 56, I think, at the moment. So 56 people who give me a bit of money every month, and it just keeps me afloat because I live off the pension mainly. And it's just amazing having these people there who are like, we want you to keep making stuff. And so I hadn't shown anyone any part of my book before, but I just for them put up an excerpt of my book. So this is the excerpt. When I talk about my chronic illness in public, especially on social media, I receive a constant feed of irritating responses of the "aw, honey" genre. I don't even have to be speaking about my chronic illness. If people know I have one, their responses to everything I write can take on an "aw, honey" tone. I can't make a throwaway joke about missing a tram or forgetting I already made tea, which is standard workday Twitter fare, without at least one patronizing love heart or, "oh babe, hope you're okay, XX" in response. Living with a disability, I automatically become an object of pity or an object of inspiration. I could get, "oh babe, you're so strong, you amaze me," in response to a joke tweet about Australian politics. I hate it, but I don't feel allowed to express that I hate it. These responses position me as a tragic object, and an object isn't supposed to take control of the sentence. Disabled people are supposed to receive pity and perform gratitude in return, which is what I do most of the time. I've learned that people can explode into an energetic rage when I don't perform enough gratitude for their insulting attentions. My inbox will blow up with essay-length lectures on how I should be living my life from that person who only 5 minutes before was telling me I was so strong. Sometimes sending back a smiley face or thanking them for their throwaway comments is the least draining option. There is always the fear that if I don't perform disability correctly, all the support will disappear. And this isn't paranoia. I wish it was. I've begun to recognize this able-bodied anger for what it is, and feminism has helped me to articulate it. The furious bluster from non-disabled women in my Facebook inbox bears a tonal similarity to the "fuck you cunt" from men on the street when I don't smile on their command. It's a reminder of power. Non-disabled people remind me that I should be grateful for their attention, with the coded subtext that they could easily let me die in anonymity. It's similar to how men's flat stares remind me that I should be grateful for their comments because they could have easily killed me instead. This kind of manly chivalry equals not actively using their personal and institutional strength to crush me. Non-disabled allyship is much the same. The charitable donations to advocacy organizations or to my PayPal account could dry up. My social safety net could be voted away. They don't have to give up their seat.
Kaitlyn, thanks so much for being on my podcast again.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Crossover episode.
You can find Kaitlyn on Twitter at her handle Kay Plyley for all her latest thoughts and thinkings. And you can also check out her podcast, Just a Spoonful, wherever you get good podcasts. And I will let you know on this one when the episode that she did with me goes up. A few bird notes for this episode. The kakapo is the name of that critically endangered New Zealand bird. It is the only type of flightless parrot in the world, and there are fewer than 200 of them left. The sound a cassowary makes, I just had to get this for you because Well, you'll see. These are some assorted sounds that cassowaries make. So those are not sound effects from a Jurassic Park movie. Those are the sounds that a real animal that lives, breathes, walks, and feeds on this current Earth in this current time. Those are the sounds that it makes. So sweet dreams. Hope you managed to get to sleep at night knowing that information, that there is an animal that sounds like that out there. Here's a fun thing. So there's a podcast called Springs and Mr. Geek, and they review things like TV shows and movies and other podcasts as well. And they reviewed Gimme Empathy on an episode. They were very nice. And if you want to hear that, it is in Season 5, Episode 18 of Springs and Mr. Geek. If you're in Brisbane and you're listening to this the week it comes out, come to Sonic Masala Fest. It's on Saturday, the 18th of August. This is the year 2018 for the time travelers. And it's basically my favorite time of the year. It's a music festival held at the Green Slopes Bowls Club, and there's some really awesome bands playing. And last year I embarrassed myself in front of Kelly Lloyd there. See episode 27 for that story. So come see what happens this year as I juggle doing an outside broadcast for 4ZZZ and playing a set with my band Slumlord. It'll be great. Come to that. All right. See you next time. Stay